A fine and wonderful Sunday afternoon to everybody. Welcome, 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 welcome. Aquaba, as we say, welcome in Fonte. Good to have all of you here with us today. We hope, as always, you're able to maintain your best physical, mental, and spiritual health during these times and all times. Really happy to be here with you today and glad that you all are here with us. As we talk about a very important topic, revolution. Before we get into it, just some quick housekeeping items that we share every week. This is our 16th week in a row, Shakur and I doing this program. And so we are really thankful for all of you, many of you who join every week, if not most weeks. And if you're joining for the first time or anything in between, we really appreciate you taking time out of your Sunday afternoon to join us for what we hope you'll find to be a rewarding hour spent talking about this topic. We start always by acknowledging the indigenous people of the Western Hemisphere. This is their land. It was stolen from them. It continues to be stolen from them, even if they engage in aspects of symbolically returning portions of it to them. And I say symbolically because you know, something is not yours until you control it 100%. And it was stolen from them, violently stolen, continues to be stolen. They're oppressed and suffering as a result of that theft. So we always acknowledge that this is their land. It's not your land. It's not this land is your land. This land is our land. This long, whatever that ridiculous song says. This is their land. It was stolen from them. And we certainly intend to do everything in our power to help them get it back. And when you hear that, if that makes you wonder, well, what about me? Then our response to that is, what about you? You know, it's not yours. And so, you know, you have to, that has to be a part of the process. If people want real change, that certainly is at the top of the list. And we also acknowledge our African ancestors who have fought colonialism, slavery, the development of capitalism, imperialism. They fought it for 500 plus years, from the eastern shores of Africa all the way out to the western shores of the Western Hemisphere. They fought, they continue to fight, they always fight. And in that vein, just a quick note about, you know, Kwame Ture has been trending on social media since John Lewis's funeral, and that demon, Bill Clinton there, who made comments suggesting that our movement was spiraling in the wrong direction when Kwame Ture, who was Stokely Carmichael, became the chairperson of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, defeating John Lewis in 1966. And so it's been trending because our people know who makes positive contributions for us. And the whole essence of that is very related to the topic today, because essentially what that demon said is that anybody who makes any effort to engage in struggle that is outside the parameters of the capitalist system is clearly insane. And so his reference to the former Stokely Carmichael, Kwame Ture, had that spirit in mind. And the suggestion is that anyone who agrees to work only within the parameters of the capitalist system is prevailing, and anyone who doesn't is not. And we want to say, certainly, those of us who have knew Brother Kwame Ture and worked with Brother Kwame Ture, know his contribution on our lives. And the fact that 22 years after his physical disappearance from the planet Earth, he can still generate such concern among the bourgeoisie class is testament of the fact that he spent his entire last 30 years of his life, Kwame Ture did, working to build Pan-African cadre to carry out his mission. He knew he would not live to see one unified socialist Africa, to see the elimination of the capitalist system, but he knew that the best contribution he could make was to build Pan-African cadre. And these people know that. They know that this is something that's existing, and that a lot of what Kwame saw as a vision is now certainly on the ground reality, is being built all over the African world. So we acknowledge that. We acknowledge our ancestor, Kwame Ture, all of our ancestors who fight for our liberation. And we thank you again for joining us. Those of you on Zoom, you will be muted the whole time. Please feel free to write in comments, questions if you have them. And obviously on Facebook, a lot of people watching on Facebook already. Thank you. You will also be able to do the same. So with that, we will go ahead and get started. And as always, we start with introductions about who we are. My name is Ajamu, longtime organizer in the All African People's Revolutionary Party, AAPRP. I've done work for the party on 3 continents and the Caribbean, and will continue to work in this organization for every breath I have remaining in me during this lifetime. And I'm happily and honored to be joined every week by my lovely, amazing, outstanding activist organizer daughter, Shakura, who grew up in the Young Pioneer Institute of the All African People's Revolutionary Party. Now she is a activist organizer working in another part of this plantation of this country, working on her doctorate degree, focusing on issues of African women's health, and doing outstanding work where she is on the ground, contributing to the conditions of African women, particularly poor African women. So just honored to be able to do this with her. And just also want to make sure, when we say All African People's Revolutionary Party, that, you get a chance to understand what we're talking about. What we're talking about is an independent, revolutionary, Pan-African political party that is based in Africa and has an objective of Pan-Africanism, which we define as one unified socialist Africa, one unified socialist Africa. And so if that phrase scares you or you don't know what to do with it, what I would suggest you do is take a look at that book you see on your screen, the Handbook of Revolutionary Warfare, written by our founder, Kwame Nkrumah. And in that book, Nkrumah wrote about the strategy to achieve revolutionary Pan-Africanism. And the strategy he talked about was based on uniting Pan-African revolutionary formations on the ground in Africa. And so people always ask me, John, why are you going to Africa so much? Well, I'm not going there to sunbathe. I'm going there to contribute to our work to achieve the strategy illustrated in the handbook. And so there you see the logos of the various political formations that we have worked over the last 50 years to develop strong relationships with today. And what all of these organizations have in common are they all have the objective of one unified socialist Africa, bringing reality to Nkrumah's vision that he wrote about in the handbook, the Pan-Africanist Congress of Azania. Azania is what you would call South Africa. It's not South Africa. That's what the Germans and the Europeans renamed it. It's Azania, which is a Zulu word that means land of the Black people. The PAIGC, the African Party for the Independence of Guinea-Bissau, founded by Amilcar Cabral, who was, of course, a student of Kwame Nkrumah and Sekou Touré, and whose base was in Guinea-Conakry, the home of the Democratic Party of Guinea, whose logo you see on the right with the elephant. The party founded by Sekou Touré is also one of our sister parties today. The Azanian People's Organization, the Amilcar Cabral Ideological School in Nigeria, the Zimbabwe Movement for Pan-African Socialists. I was supposed to be in Zimbabwe last month, if it were not for this pandemic, to do work with that organization, who we again, have a sister relationship with. So all of these organizations and many more fighting for one unified socialist Africa. And we don't do that in isolation. We have not only have chapters all over Africa and all over the world, but we work hand in hand with other liberation movements who are engaged in work to bring about change. The Filipino National Liberation Movement, the Irish Republican Socialist National Liberation Movement, the Palestinian National Liberation Movement, and of course, as I mentioned, the struggle of the indigenous people of the Western Hemisphere. I was reminded the other day by an old comrade of 1992 when we proudly took up the responsibility of helping provide security for the American Indian movement at the 500-year quincentennial commemoration held in the Bay Area here in San Francisco, and got a chance to bodyguard for people like Bill Means and Russell Means, and was proud and honored to do that, and would do that again without the slightest hesitation. And I remember that day, and I'm certain that the one overzealous European who didn't want to abide by respect for their policies that day will never forget it either, when he certainly was physically rebuffed from trying to get into the tent that the Means family was involved in that day, some almost 30 years ago. So honored to engage in that work, and we'll always continue to do that work. And now we're going to transition to our topic for the day: revolution, what it is, what it means, what it looks like, what it do. So with that, I'm going to start by turning it over to Shakura, who's going to get us started.
Okay, thank you so much. And as always, I'm super grateful to be on here with you. It's such a beautiful thing to choose to have a growth mindset, right? Like, I think we make choices about how we choose to spend our time and what we want to take out of situations that we find ourselves in. And so for me, I'm super grateful for the party and my dad for inviting me to be a part of this, because I do choose to have a growth mindset, and I'm very humble to be able to take away countless lessons that I didn't know before I was able to give presentations for the previous week. So thank you to the party and to Daddy for that. It continues to be an interesting experience as we continue to deconstruct oppression everywhere. So thank you. Okay, so revolution, the word, is probably one of the most misused words in any language. This isn't a coincidence. Capitalism and capitalist, the people who own and control the production of products and resources worldwide, possess a stranglehold on all information dispersed throughout the world today. The curriculum in schools, they control it. The mass media, they own and control it. As a result, all 6 billion people on the earth are constantly pumped with the bourgeoisie perspective of everything. And since those capitalists always oppose true revolution because it challenges and seizes their immoral and illegal power, they always want you to remain confused about exactly what revolution is, because they know if you become informed, there's an extremely strong possibility you will grow to respect and desire revolutionary change. It's all by strategy. Nothing is by accident. So for today's talk, please keep in mind that these things that people often confuse with revolution, in fact, have absolutely nothing to do with revolution. I'm talking about the belief that revolutions are just bloody massacres with no purpose. That's not revolution. Uprisings that are spontaneous, meaning not planned and coordinated. Uprisings by a few hundred people, thousands of people, those are probably not revolutions. Uprisings to remove an unpopular politician, like what happened in 2011 in North Africa, Egypt, or Tunisia. Those are uprisings, all right, but they are not revolutions. Next slide, please. Another common misconception is even the mobilization of a mass movement to move people out of power isn't necessarily a revolution. The key determination here is whether a people over profit system, socialism, replaces the profit over people system that people are rebelling against. At the very least, that would be a requirement to even be considered a revolution. Revolution isn't like becoming a Christian. All respect due. With Christianity, there is a concept of repentance. What this means is you could raise hell on Saturday night, but have complete remorse on Sunday and decide to repent your earlier actions. The way Christianity is widely practiced, this immediate conversation could be possible, which is a wonderful thing, but being a revolutionary is quite different. Revolutionary work, consciousness, takes extensive study and engaging in revolutionary organizing work. This also means disengaging any foundational or systemic barriers to do the work by any means. So no disrespect to anyone, but that person, like the Sacramento police officer who said in a meeting that he was, air quotes, the Malcolm X of the police department, saying that represent his view of how he bucks the department, but belonging to one of the key institutions that upholds our oppression disqualifies that person as a revolutionary. Also, Hollywood is the propaganda arm of the capitalist system. As a result, it has a long tradition of portraying revolutionaries and revolution as a bloodthirsty endeavor. For example, Killmonger in the Black Panther movie is portrayed this way. He's shown by being abusive to people, including women, in that movie. He has no patience with anyone, and he displays all of the characteristics that revolution is not. His character actually better represents someone imbued with capitalistic ideology, someone who sees people as a means to an end. And the fact they allowed him to be peppered with some good dialogue, but that doesn't negate the fact he really isn't a good person. That's why it's so important to remember that revolution isn't what the capitalist system tells you it is. That's like going to your worst enemy and expecting them to provide a healthy analysis about you. Not going to happen. The point of the example of Killmonger's character is that the capitalist system has trained everyone to believe that militant attitudes and actions, even anti-human ones, are the same as revolutionary consciousness and actions, and this is without question not true. Another way to think about tainted narratives or wrong information disseminated through capitalism is considering the foundation of where the information is coming from. From the moment we are ready to begin education, at least in the United States, kindergartners, sometimes even earlier than kinder, learn their numbers and their letters and associated sounds for each letter. Some students may be faster at gaining this skill while others may need extra help. But the bottom line is kindergarten sets the foundation for how students will learn and apply reading, writing, counting, and mathematical skills in their life. So if their experience in kindergarten was difficult, this obviously will affect how those skills are developed. If their kindergarten teacher did not accomplish teaching them those solid foundational skills, or maybe use the time to teach them something else, then these babies will be derailed in their learning, and that sets them on a different course. Capitalism is the same, and being the foundation for how information in context to revolutionaries and revolution are defined. Again, the people who own and control the production of products and resources worldwide possess a stranglehold on all information dispersed throughout the world today. So we, the party, caution you to consider this as an indicator the next time you gain some information about a revolution. Thank you.
Thank you, daughter. We appreciate you. So if all of those things Shakur talked about are not revolution, then what is revolution? What is it? What does it actually manifest itself to be? So I'll just start by taking your attention to the picture on the left. And what that picture is, you all, is it's a commemoration, it's people commemorating the founding of the Viet Minh Front. And if you don't know, the Viet Minh Front was the collection of people's organizations that carried out the Vietnamese resistance against US imperialism. So in the Viet Minh Front, you had a collective of organized workers. You had a collective of organized women. You had organized students, organized elderly people. You had all the segments of the society that represented the Vietnamese resistance. And filtered throughout all of those segments was the Vietnamese Communist Party. They were the foundation for that work. So what happened there is that they were engaged in the process of doing consistent on the ground work to get people to understand what was necessary to run the US imperialists out of their country. Now, we understand how propaganda works, and so we know there's probably somebody listening or watching who's like, well, my friends came from Vietnam. Someone said this, I get this all the time. My friends came from Vietnam, and they think that the Vietnamese Revolution was, an oppressive endeavor for them. And revolution is a science, you all. That's how we have to look at it. So because somebody from Vietnam or Cuba or Venezuela or wherever they're from, and they tell you, well, yeah, that didn't work out, that is not criteria to evaluate the quality of a revolution. No more than this person the other day, they told me, well, I'm from China, so I know communism is bad. And I said, well, obviously you don't, because communism has never happened in the world yet. Where has communism happened? Communism is a society where class structures have been completely obliterated. That's never happened. That has not happened in the modern world. So how could you say communism is bad when it hasn't happened? So you don't even know what communism is. So, well, my family's from there. I'm like, well, my family is from Louisiana here, a slave state here in the United States of America. And so I'm telling you about my experience with white supremacy, my whole life, my parents' whole life, my grandparents' whole life, and you're arguing with me. So clearly just the fact that I have the actual experience is not enough criteria for you to accept my analysis of the conditions. So I don't know why you think the fact that your family comes from China is going to be enough for me to accept your family's evaluation of the experience of socialist development. And that's, to me, it's perfectly valid. I told them I'd have to know who your family was and what they were doing there before I could say, what the status is on their situation in China. Just because that was your family, that doesn't mean they were good people. A lot of the people that came here after the Vietnamese and Chinese Revolution were not good people. So, that's why they had to leave those countries. So, we have to, that's a different discussion. But the point is that we have to begin to understand that revolution is a process. It's a process. It's a building process. And that process is still taking place in places around the world. So what is it that's taking place? Well, when we say the word revolution, really what we're talking about is a transformation of power from bourgeoisie capitalists, meaning multinational corporations who own and control all of the means of production on the planet Earth, like the production of cars, they own it. The water, they own it. The air, they own it. The production of clothes, they own it. The production of food, they own it. They own and control everything. So they don't own and control those things because they just worked hard and everyone and they had a better plan. We've talked about in great detail in these seminars how capitalism, the system itself, the economic system where the means of production are owned and controlled for private profit. We've talked about in great detail how that entire system evolved from the transatlantic slave trade that has every African in the Western Hemisphere living here today. So they didn't get all of that wealth by any hard work. They got it through theft, murder, and terrorism. Theft of the indigenous people's land here, terrorism and theft of the African masses, kidnapping us from Africa and forcing us to work free here in this hemisphere for 350 years, not just in the United States, but throughout this entire hemisphere, free for that entire period of time. So revolution is a process where these people who have been historically wronged and who have been oppressed because of these development of these oppressive systems organize and seize power back from the bourgeoisie and the capitalist class. That's what revolution is. That is the definition of revolution. So if that's not happening, then you're not looking at a revolution. I don't care how many people call it a revolution. If you're just changing one president in a country to another president, but the economic system remains capitalism, that's not a revolution. It's a great uprising, but we're saying in clear terms, that's not what a revolution is. A revolution has to be the transfer of power from the oppressor class to the oppressed class. If that does not happen, it's not a revolution. Secondly, revolutions are fought for the masses. They're not fought for any privileged class of people. They're fought for the people on the bottom of society. So when you're trying to assess the quality of a revolution in Cuba, in Vietnam, in Venezuela, etc., you have to be able to hear the voices of the masses of people who are on the bottom of that society. And you know what? Since, as Shakur said, the capitalist classes own and control all propaganda, you're not hearing from people on the streets, on the ground in Vietnam. You're not hearing from the masses of people in Cuba. You don't even know where to go to listen to what those people have to say. And that's not by accident, that's by design. The only people you get information to about the Cuban Revolution are the bourgeoisie class people in Southern Florida. Marco Rubio and all of these representatives of the bourgeoisie class. Those are the people who talk about what the Cuban Revolution is. In fact, it was stated in one of the books, one of the Kiss and Tell books that just came out, that Trump's policy for Cuba is whatever Marco Rubio wants, quote unquote. So you don't even get any real information. And the reason why we know that is because the majority of people in Cuba are African people. Of course, we're on the bottom of the society. This entire Western Hemisphere was built on enslaving us, exploiting our labor. So of course we're exploited. But you don't hear anything from the masses of African people in Cuba about how they hear about their revolution. You're listening to mostly what you get is from the people, again, in Southern Florida who are 98% white, 98% European. So revolutions are fought for the people on the bottom of society. So when someone like this guy, Guido, or however you pronounce his name, who staged the attempted coup d'etat in Venezuela, this guy went to Princeton University, you all. He is not speaking from the position of some oppressed mass in Venezuela. That would be the poor descendants of the indigenous people. That would be the African people in Venezuela. Those are the people who support the Bolivarian revolution there, not the petty bourgeoisie, you know, the manager classes, not the bourgeoisie, who are the people who represent the ruling classes. So revolutions are always fought for the people on the bottom. So if you're not studying what the people on the bottom think about the revolution, you're certainly not getting a clear perspective of what the revolution is all about. And so, of course, armed struggle is an inevitable element of revolutionary struggle. Let me say that again. Armed struggle is an element of revolutionary struggle because, as Frederick Douglass said, power concedes nothing without a demand. And you cannot give us one example where people who have power have willingly given it away, especially after they've killed millions to get and sustain it, as these capitalists have. They are not going to willingly give it away. They will certainly. I was I forgot what city I'm in. I was traveling, and there was a cafe where I went, and they had a sign on the window that said, they had a mural of George Floyd, and they had a sign on the window that said, we feel your pain, something like that. That's it. We hear your voices, we feel your pain, we are with you. Now, I had actually gone in that place multiple times. And when I had gone in there, I got, long before any of this started in recent months, I got the same, really strange stares and treatment that I get being a 6'3", 220-pound African man who's assertive in this backward, racist, capitalist society. So I know what that looks like. So when I saw that on their window, I said, okay, that sure is nice. And the person I was with said, isn't that nice? I'm like, yeah. I said, it's like the movie They Live. If you saw that old movie, They Live, from 1988, the gentleman in the movie, he got the shades. And when he put the shades on, he could see the real propaganda messages and he could see who the aliens were. But without the shades, everything looked quote unquote normal. So I told this person I was with, it's like They Live, like that thing on the window is like They Live. And they're like, what are you talking about? I'm like, really what they're saying is, please don't burn my store down. That's really what they're saying by having all that on there, because those people don't care about African lives. They don't even want African lives in their store. So this is necessary to say that this system will never relinquish power. Yeah, they'll paint Black Lives Matter on the street, but they won't seriously engage in a discussion designed to address the social, political, economic inequities that make it necessary for Black lives to matter. They won't do that. So armed struggle is absolutely necessary, but that's really just a small portion of revolutionary struggle. Although the capitalist system wants you to believe that all of revolution is armed struggle, it's really a very small portion of it. The majority of revolution is the struggle to organize the masses of people, the mass political education campaigns. What I mentioned about the Vietnamese front in Vietnam, the organizing the youth, the students, the workers, women, non-men, elders, colonized people. That's the work. That's the real work in revolution. So because we understand that, we know that 1,500 Africans marching with guns in Kentucky, that's not revolution. I know it's great imagery. I know we want imagery, we're tired of being oppressed, but it's not revolution. And if there's no political education driving the guns, then there's no revolution. I just have a different background. I mean, I've been around firearms my whole life, trained with them my whole life. And one thing I have learned from the elders that taught me what I know about that is you don't bring firearms out until you're ready to use them, until you're going to be squeezing the trigger. You don't display. Firearms are not costumes. They're not jewelry. They're not costume jewelry. They're not props for a play. You do not display them until you're ready to use them. So pardon me, but I'm suspicious of performative art because I know the difference between performative art and revolution. And revolution would not be about displaying guns with no revolutionary program to guide the usage of the guns. Even the Black Panther Party said that. If you look at the Eyes on the Prize documentary, Huey P. Newton says that himself in there. The brains behind the creation of the Black Panther Party for self-defense. He says that. He says everybody joined the Black Panther Party while he was in prison, while he was incarcerated, because they wanted the guns and the berets and the leather jackets, and they didn't embrace the ideas and the concepts that the party was articulating. So we have to understand, like, the core work of revolution is getting people to embrace the ideas for creating a better society. Because once you can get people to create those, to embrace those ideas, then you can get people to carry out the work to bring those ideas about. And whatever tools you use to do that, whether it's books, whether it's social media, whether it's guns, those that serve no purpose except to help you achieve that objective. As Che Guevara said, revolution is driven by love. So you have people here today claiming they're revolutionaries, and they don't even, they're negative with people. They can't stand talking to people. They snap at people. They tell you, just admit, I don't even like people. I don't want to, but they tell you they're revolutionary. Not possible. Not possible. Revolutionaries have to be imbued with love. You know why? Because in this backward society, being a revolutionary is extremely difficult, you all, because everything you do, people are designed to see it as insane. So you have to have so much patience and humility with people. I can't tell you how many times over the years I've been disrespected, I've been treated badly, I've been just absolutely ignored, whatever the case may be. That's just the life of a revolutionary in this backward society. So the only way you can stomach that and endure that is to have that humility and that love for people, and be at the point where you don't take that personally. You understand that people are oppressed and that our work is to combat that. So that's the core of revolution, not marching with no guns, not even shooting guns, but being able to have a love for humanity and to dedicate your life to organizing humanity. Those are the principles that underscore any genuine revolutionary effort. So then what are the steps in a revolutionary process? What do those steps look like? So we would argue that it is absolutely necessary to have a revolution. And that's the thing, like, people don't understand the difference between political parties and movements. There's a vast difference. Like Black Lives Matter, that's a movement. What that means is that people who come to Black Lives Matter marches, some of them come there and they're like, well, we got to get Joe Biden in there. That's the key thing to make sure Black Lives Matter. Other people might be, well, Joe Biden's not going to do it. We got to get the Green Party in there to protect Black lives. Some people might come and say, well, I don't even want to vote anybody into office. All I want to do is just express my frustration at this and figure out the solution later. Some people might come and say, well, the solution is anarchism. Some people might come and say, well, the solution is socialism leading to communism. There are all kinds of people in a movement. A movement does not have a singular ideology. That's why if you understand that, then you understand clearly, like these people saying, well, Black Lives Matter is Marxist. Clearly, these people haven't read one book. Read is a dirty four-letter word to those people. They have no clue what they're talking about. And I don't know about you, but I get that all the time from people. It's a Marxist movement. I'm like, well, first, you don't know anything about Marxism. Because if you did, you would. So I wish Black Lives Matter was a Marxist movement. If you knew anything about Marxism, you know clearly they're not. I wish it was. Even though I'm not a Marxist, I wish they were. So that's not getting us to any type of understanding of what that's about. Movements are mass engagements of people, no clear ideology. Movements are great because a lot of these people, whether it's the women's marches, the LGBTQ marches, the African marches against police terrorism, these are oftentimes people's initial introduction to activist work. So that's a beautiful thing. It's a wonderful thing. And I think it's outstanding, but it's not a revolution. You got to understand that. That's not what that is. It's a movement. It's something designed to get people an understanding of an issue. That's what movement work does. It gets people to understand Black Lives Matter. If nothing else, no matter what you want to say about Black Lives Matter, they certainly have escalated the consciousness around the world about police terrorism against African people. That's what movements do. Now, a revolution is different in that a revolution has to be guided by a political ideology, one monolithic political ideology. Now, for some people, that's Marxist-Leninism, following the ideas of Karl Marx and Vladimir Lenin. We applaud that, but we believe ideology comes from your culture. So since we're African people, we can't be Marxist-Leninists. And we can't be Marxist-Leninists because the ideas articulated in Marxist-Leninism are contrary to many of the important elements of African culture. For example, Karl Marx talks about religion being the opium of the people. Well, if you study the history, none of the organized religions had stronghold in Europe, none of them. In fact, Christianity, Europe isn't even mentioned until the Book of Revelation at the end. So none of the major religions had a stronghold in Europe. So it makes sense if you understand that atheism took a stronghold in Europe. And that's fine. It's not a judgment, nothing at all. It's just a historical fact. So ideologies that emanate from Europe typically have strong atheist foundations in them. Again, nothing wrong with that. It's a cultural phenomenon in Europe. But Europe's history is not the history of the world. In Africa, spirituality is dominant. Spirituality is dominant among African people. Everywhere we exist on the planet Earth, spirituality is dominant. I watched this movie the other night called Supremacists. It's about these white supremacists that take Danny Glover's, his family hostage. And the woman, white supremacist, she asked the sister in the house, do you believe in God? And before the sister answered, she said, you black, all black people love them some God. And that's an accurate statement. So, you know, as Kwame Ture said when he was organizing in SNCC, they knew they could not go in the African communities talking about we don't believe in God because our people won't even listen to you if you say that. And so most of the time, our movements are not atheistic. And so that's a major difference with Marxist-Leninism. Like we don't believe religion is the opium of the people. We believe that spirituality can play a positive role in revolutionary struggle. We believe that when Miss Fannie Lou Hamer was interviewed and they asked her, how does Jesus help her deal with the Ku Klux Klan in Mississippi? When she answered, I have a shotgun in every room in my house. And I pray to God that if them crackers break in my house, I have straight aim. We believe in that. We believe in that type of Christianity. We think that's a very positive form of Christianity. So we differ with Marxist-Leninism on that regard. We differ on the question of vanguard parties as opposed to mass parties. These are different discussions, but I'm just making the point that there are different political ideologies. Marxist-Leninism, Trotskyism, Maoism, whatever the case may be. For us, in our Pan-African revolutionary life, our ideology is Nkrumahism Traism. We take it from the ideas of Kwame Nkrumah, who we talked about in the book in the earlier slide, and Sekou Touré, who's being held up in the picture in the bottom left there by our dear departed comrade sister Mawina Coyote. So their ideas of African revolution drive our work. And a lot of people, you know, because white supremacy dominates in the world, a lot of people try to discredit Kwame Nkrumah and Sekou Touré because they never subscribe to the what white left revolutionaries think is appropriate for revolutionary ideology and struggle. And so we don't ever, you know, operate our movement based on what white leftists say. So, you know, we say that even though they try to say people like Amilcar Cabral, they label him a Marxist-Leninist, Cabral himself said that ideology cannot be imported. And Cabral was a student of Kwame Nkrumah and Sekou Touré. So it's funny to us when people say, well, Amilcar Cabral was a Marxist-Leninist. Amilcar Cabral was a co-founder of the All-African People's Revolutionary Party. Check your history if you don't believe it. We got plenty of history. We got all the documents, all the film, all the everything to document that he was in the first work-study circle for the All-African People's Revolutionary Party. So clearly, he understood. We understand that there are different ideologies based on culture. So revolution has to evolve from a political ideology, a monolithic, one political ideology. And so whether it's Nkrumahism, Traism, Marxism, etc., that's the guiding force for your revolution. And so once you have that, the people were organized under that ideology. That's a seminar in and of itself, but it's just important to point out, because if you see people marching with guns and you say, what's their ideology? And they say, well, we got different ideologies, but we're revolutionaries, then that's probably not a revolution, you all. So, you know, we look at the picture there of Vilma Espin and Celia Sanchez, two of the matriarchs of the Cuban Revolution. We know about Fidel and Che and Raul and the others, but we don't hear as much about the sisters who contributed to the revolution in Cuba. And so they were two monumental contributors to the revolutionary process in Cuba. But a political ideology guiding that, and then political education. Vilma Espin, you know, everyone knows the story, most people know the story of the Cuban Revolution. They sailed on the Grandma and it sank, and only 11 of them made it to the Sierra Maestra Mountains in Santiago de Cuba to start the guerrilla war that eventually overthrew Batista. A lot of people know that story, but very few people know that without the urban network that was organizing the strikes of the organized sectors I mentioned in Cuba, the workers, the students, the elderly people, the women, all of that happened with those 11 people in the mountains could never have been victorious just on its own. And so Vilma Espin, Celia Sanchez were key critical players in organizing that ground network throughout cities like Santa Clara, Cuba, Santiago, Cuba, Havana, Cuba, Trinidad, Cuba, Cienfuegos, Cuba, all of those places. They engaged in organizing those sectors to stop work, to destroy the economy, to bring the economy to a standstill, which would again turn people more against the regime. This is what you want when you're organizing a revolution. This is not picking up guns, shooting anybody, you all. This is the positive action work that is the core of any revolutionary struggle. So that's what it looks like. You have to be engaged in on-the-ground organization. And so that's why we gave the seminar about community defense. It's a critical component to establishing the mechanisms to do that kind of on-the-ground work to support a revolutionary process. And again, it has to be fueled by the political education, which of course is directed by your ideology. When people say, well, I don't have an ideology. Well, you have one, you just don't know you have one. Everybody has an ideology. Ideology drives everything we do. And when I was living in Africa once years ago, the elder sister told me even to use the bathroom is a political act driven by ideology. And I didn't understand what she was talking about. I was in my 20s then, but I certainly understand what she meant now. And there's no question about that, because depending upon where political and economic conditions place you in the world, that determines your resources to use the bathroom, which is a political question. So there's no debate about that. That's clear. everything is political, and everything political is driven by ideology. So these mass political positive action campaigns are the formation of any revolutionary process, and they are the foundation that supports any armed struggle that's taking place. Organization, on the ground, again, is the key. And this is a critical question, you all, because one of the things that really befuddles me in the US is that a lot of the people in the US who say that they're revolutionaries, who say that they want to overthrow capitalism and replace it with socialism or something else, anarchism or something, a lot of these people say they're revolutionaries, but they have no on-the-ground revolutionary work that they're engaging in to organize anybody. And not only that, but they have no, they don't even talk about revolutionary work. They don't even talk about revolutionary organizing work. Like most of these people talk about the bourgeois election in November. And I'm not saying like if the election is your thing, that's not, please don't leave it. Well, you said the election is bad. That we're not, we already talked about that a few weeks ago. We're not talking about that now. But the point I'm making now is, how can you say you're a revolutionary and you have no revolutionary work? You're not involved in a revolutionary party, an organization. Like I talk to people all the time. Well, I'm a revolutionary. Well, what's your organization? Well, I don't have one. Well, how are you a revolutionary with no organization when the core of revolution is organizing people? Revolution is not just you saying you're a revolutionary, like the cop saying he's the Malcolm X of his police department. That's insanity talking to say that. You have to have an organization, or as Kwame Ture said, you can't be revolutionary without revolutionary organization. It's just that simple. So I don't understand why people say they're revolutionary, but all they talk about is what's going to happen between Trump and Biden. And trust me, I have a master's degree that I got in political science, so I can certainly talk about Trump and Biden. That's not my point. My point is that if you're revolutionary, how is it that you have no revolutionary analysis of the elections? Then you're not a revolutionary. Which is okay, that's fine. I just want to state that clearly because there's so much confusion. I'm revolutionary, I want revolution. Well, all I can talk about is the bourgeois election between the Democratic and Republican Party, but I'm revolutionary. Well, where? How? What? Who? When? Revolutionaries have programs, they have ideology, they have work that they're carrying out. If you don't have that, guess what? You're not revolutionary. It's not the end of the world because you can certainly become one, but that has to be clearly understood. So again, I can't say this enough. The mass positive action efforts are the key to sustaining guerrilla war efforts when they happen. So if you want a slideshow of what revolution looks like, of course, it's always different, but I would say just for the sake of this discussion, we're talking about on the ground work to organize people. And that's why I make the previous point, because we don't have people in communities organizing people around revolutionary ideology. That's not taking place on the mass scale. And until you can't have revolution without revolutionaries. So what needs to happen is we've got to have people engaging people in revolutionary work. The first part of that is getting people involved in work study circles, in circles where people can study and understand the conditions that we're engaged in. That people can understand who finances the Democratic Party, who finances the Republican Party. Why does the US have 100 military bases in Africa? What's the US's relationship with Zionist Israel? What is the US relationship to Central and South America, to the progressive regimes that have risen there, Bolivia, Venezuela, what's happening in Brazil? Studying all of these conditions is absolutely necessary, and having a revolutionary ideology that gives you tools of analysis to analyze them in a revolutionary context is essential. And then helping people understand how to do that, giving them the resources and the materials to do that on a mass level, and then engaging in work to support that. So it's not just the academic exercise, but you're engaging in projects, community defense projects, for example, where you're organizing entire communities on a block by block basis, initially around issues. It could be police terrorism. It could be any number of things. It could be housing. It can be any number of things, healthcare. But the analysis that you're using to organize people around those issues is a revolutionary one. So if you're organizing people around police terrorism, you're saying to them, the problem is the capitalist system. Police were created to terrorize people back onto the slave plantation. So police in and of themselves, the institution, will never protect and serve. They're about protecting the interests of the capitalist system. That's why when people go out to protest, they come out and engage in violence against the people over a building, because their job is to protect the capitalist system. So your analysis when you're organizing people has to be that. If it's housing, it's not just, well, we got to be able to make sure people can afford housing. No, a revolutionary analysis is that housing is a right. And if we don't have housing for people, we got to organize and take housing for people. We have to organize and do that. We have to organize so that we take over whole communities of housing and supply them to people, because in revolutionary societies, housing is a right. So we give them that analysis. We give them analysis that women, non-men, have to be given all the resources to reach their full potential in society. And homophobia, anti-womanism, patriarchy, white supremacy, none of these things can be permitted to exist in a revolutionary society, understanding that it's going to take a while to wipe them out. That's why revolutionary societies, socialist societies have free education, because after a few generations, you can begin to slowly but surely eliminate the backward ideas as people get more and more progressive in revolutionary education. So all of these things are happening. And then at that point, when you get people to that level of escalated consciousness, then the question of seizing power from the state doesn't seem so incredibly impossible like it does right now, because people have no analysis and no experience successfully organizing to see, yes, we can beat this system. So once we have that, then the armed struggle becomes the easy part of revolution. But the revolution isn't over even when you take power. That's why in revolutionary Cuba, they say the armed struggle ended January 1st, 1959, but here they are 60 years later, they're still calling it the Cuban Revolution. They don't say, well, we won, because what I just talked about, they have to engage in the process of raising people's consciousness. And since 80% of the people couldn't read, the first thing they had to do, that these two sisters here were instrumental in, is organizing a literacy campaign. And so these are all the things you do to raise people's consciousness. And it takes time, and you're being attacked by imperialism, so you have that obstacle. So yeah, 60 years, 100 years, 150 years, who knows how long it will take. But eventually, a lot of the problems that we experience now will be wiped out. And once that consciousness grows to a point of saturation where the masses of people have it, that level of consciousness, then we no longer need state apparatuses that we use during socialist transformation to provide for people's needs. We no longer need these state apparatuses when people's consciousness reaches a certain level, a heightened level. So when people reach the level where they can organize effectively to make sure all the children are taken care of, all of the people with physical challenges are taken care of, all of the people with mental illness are taken care of, and people can organize to the point where they can do that without state institutions having a role in that, then at this point, we will begin to see the class systems begin to eradicate themselves, and the state itself will begin to eradicate itself, because we don't need police, because people will make sure that people are safe, because people have that level of consciousness. Right now, people don't have that level. Some of you do, some of us do, but most of us don't. Like if somebody's attacked, a large portion of people will just go on about their business. People see people attacking people all the time and just pretend like they don't see it. People see people sleeping on the street all the time, pretend like they don't see it. That's not a conscious society. People see children that they pretty much can tell are not in a safe situation and act like they don't even see it. People see women and non-men abused and act like they don't see it. They see trans women murdered and act like they don't see it. That's not a conscious society, y'all. So you can't, that's why you don't have communism now. You're not even close to that. So stop saying that. And when you hear people say that, stop them from saying it, because all they're doing is spreading confusion. We're not close to that. We won't be close to having communism until at least the majority of the world is socialist. So we're obviously a ways off from that, but we will get there. But for now, the work is ensuring that we can organize around these questions. So with that, victory, consolidation of people's power, development of scientific socialism, these things begin to happen. Okay, so winding down, you know, I show this picture of working with the school that we do here in Sacramento. We do it virtually now, of course, because again, political education is the key. So that's what we have to do, is engage in political education. Hundreds of years of backward propaganda and practice can't be erased in a few short years. So we have to begin that process through generations, right? The implementation of socialist development takes generations, and that is the bridge, the state under socialism to communist development. Communism is a good word here, you all, sorry. So we ask you, join some organization working for justice. That's the first step to making all of this happen. If you want to see it happen. And you don't even have to join a revolutionary organization, but you should join some organization working for justice. And these sites here, you want to join the All-African People's Revolutionary Party, we certainly invite you to do that. Come on in. You can go to aaprp-intl.org. You can do that. You can contact me through abetterworld.me. I just posted an article a couple of days ago talking about that demon, Bill Clinton, his comments about Kwame Ture. If you want to get some background knowledge on that, you can read that. hoodcommunist.org is a collection of writings of revolutionaries, African revolutionaries. I'm fortunate to be one of them. So please study those sources. And if you want organization, you know how to contact me if you want to join the APRP. And if you want to, if you're not African, but you want to join some organization working for justice and you want help, contact me as well to do that. Happy to provide whatever resources, but please be serious. Don't waste our time. You know, we're here to engage in serious work. So, you know, I can't be your counselor over all of your emotional issues. You need to have someone to talk to about that. I just can't do that. I don't have the capacity to do all that. You know, you'll have to find that somewhere else. I'm sorry, but a lot of times that's what it is. Like people just want to vent about their frustrations. I get it. You need to have a place to do that, but I don't have time to do that right now. I want to build something. So those of you that are ready to do that, you can reach out to me. I'm happy to help you do that. And those of you that need other type of help, then, you know, I wish you well in getting that. You deserve the right to have that. I'm not trying to dismiss that in any way. I'm just saying there's so few of us doing revolutionary work. I can't put that aside to become a community counselor. I just can't do that. I got to continue to try to do what work we can do to build this revolutionary process. So, Shakura, do you have anything before we end?
No, I have nothing to report.
Excellent. So we want to say we will keep these going. We have, you know, very large audiences every week. Appreciate that. We'll have a different topic next week. We'll let you know. Look for that. Spread the word. Please be safe out here. Please make sure you're doing something to maintain your physical, mental, and spiritual health. We want you to be healthy. You're important no matter what the capitalist system says. You're important. You have value. You contribute something to this life. And if you're not able to contribute to it under the right conditions, you will contribute to it. So we need you around. We need you healthy. We need you happy. We need you being you. You don't have to be anybody else but you. We want to build a society where you can be you and make your contribution to human society. That's what revolution is, you all. That's exactly what it is. Anybody tells you any different, they're running a game on you. So we just say, have a great rest of your Sunday afternoon. Forward ever, backwards never. We don't expect that we can educate you about revolution in 1 hour, but we want to hopefully inspire you to learn more about it. You can go to these sources to do that and other sources. We don't set trips. We just want people to be organized so we can make change for human society. We appreciate you all. Forward ever, backwards never. We'll see you hopefully next week. Stay strong.